Ryan Ford never believed in love at first sight, until the moment he locked eyes with Julia Hayes across his sister's graduation party. The world seemed to stop, champagne flutes suspended mid-toast, laughter frozen in time as the successful real estate developer felt something shift fundamentally inside him. This wasn't in his plans. He'd only returned to his hometown to support his little sister, not to have his carefully structured life turned upside down by a woman in a blue dress who smiled like she knew something the rest of the world didn't. Earth to Ryan, Sophie Ford's voice broke through his trance. "I've been talking to you for like 5 minutes. Ryan blinked, returning his attention to his sister. At 22, Sophie looked radiant in her graduation dress, her academic achievements finally realized after years of hard work. "Sorry, Soph. I'm just taking it all in," he said, adjusting his custom-tailored suit. "Your big day. Our parents would have been so proud." Sophie's eyes softened at the mention of their parents. Gone 5 years now, they'd missed so much. "I know, but you're here, that's what matters." "Wouldn't have missed it for anything," Ryan replied, though his eyes drifted back to the mystery woman who was now laughing with a group of Sophie's friends near the garden fountain. Sophie followed his gaze and grinned. "I see you've noticed Julia." "Julia," Ryan repeated, the name feeling somehow significant on his tongue. "Julia Hayes. My research partner and the only reason I passed advanced biochemistry," Sophie explained. "She's brilliant, kind, and single, in case you were wondering." Ryan felt his neck warm. "I wasn't save it," Sophie interrupted with a knowing smirk. "You haven't looked at a woman like that since before you became Mr. Real Estate Mogul." She grabbed his arm. "Come on, I'll introduce you." Before Ryan could protest, Sophie was dragging him across the expansive garden of the venue he'd rented for her celebration. At 32, Ryan had built Ford Development into one of the most successful real estate companies in the Northeast, specializing in sustainable luxury properties. His net worth had crossed into 8 figures years ago, but he rarely thought about the money anymore. What occupied his mind these days was the emptiness of his penthouse apartment, the silence that greeted him after 16-hour workdays. "Julia," Sophie called out, "I want you to meet someone." Julia turned, and Ryan felt that same jolt he'd experienced from across the party. Up close, she was even more striking, intelligent hazel eyes, dark hair falling in loose waves around her shoulders, and a natural confidence that commanded attention without demanding it. "This is my brother, Ryan." "The one I'm always complaining about," Sophie teased. Julia's eyes widened slightly. "The real estate genius who paid for this entire party and Sophie's graduate school." Ryan shifted uncomfortably. He hated when people reduced him to his bank account. "I just helped my sister. Anyone would." Julia studied him for a moment. "Not everyone could, though. It's admirable." She extended her hand. "Julia Hayes. It's nice to finally meet the man behind the legend. Sophie talks about you constantly." Ryan shook her hand, noticing how firm her grip was. "All terrible things, I'm sure." "Only about 60% terrible," Julia laughed, and the sound made Ryan's chest tighten inexplicably. "Julia's starting her residency at Metropolitan Hospital next month," Sophie explained. "She's going to be a brilliant surgeon one day." "If I survive the next 5 years of barely sleeping," Julia added with a self-deprecating smile. Ryan was intrigued. "A doctor, that's impressive." "Says the man who built a real estate empire before 30, Julia countered. There was something refreshing about her no fawning, no obvious interest in his wealth. Just direct conversation and genuine curiosity. "Sophie, we need you for photos." Someone called from across the garden. "Duty calls," Sophie sighed. "Don't scare Julia away with your workaholic tendencies, Ryan." She gave him a pointed look before hurrying off. Left alone, Ryan searched for something to say. Small talk had never been his strong suit. He was more comfortable negotiating multi-million-dollar deals than navigating social interactions. So, they both started simultaneously, then laughed. "Go ahead," Ryan offered. "I was just going to ask if parties like this make you uncomfortable." You've been standing in corners observing for most of the evening, Julia noted. Ryan raised an eyebrow. You've been watching me. Professionally, I'm trained to observe, she deflected smoothly. And you stand out. Not just because you're Sophie's brother or because you're wearing what I'm guessing is a $3,000 suit. $2,500 actually, Ryan corrected with a small smile. And yes, these events aren't really my scene. I'm more comfortable behind a desk reviewing blueprints. The mysterious millionaire stereotype fits you well, Julia remarked. Ryan winced. I'd rather just be Ryan. The money, it complicates things. I can imagine, Julia said thoughtfully. People treating you differently, never knowing if they like you or your bank account. Her perception surprised him. Most people didn't look past the wealthy businessman facade. Exactly. It's why I tend to keep to myself. Julia nodded toward the dance floor where couples were swaying to a slow song. Well, Ryan, not the millionaire, would you like to dance? I promise not to ask for investment advice or a loan. Her directness caught him off guard, but Ryan found himself smiling genuinely for the first time that evening. I'd like that. As they moved to the dance floor, Ryan noticed several guests watching them curiously. He was used to the attention, but it felt different with Julia by his side. He placed his hand gently on her waist as they began to sway to the music. Fair warning, he said, I haven't danced in years. Just follow my lead, Julia replied, guiding him into a simple rhythm. Ryan was surprised at how natural it felt to move with her. Where did you learn to dance? My grandmother taught me. She believed everyone should know how to waltz properly, Julia explained. She was old-fashioned that way. Was? Ryan asked gently. She passed away my first year of medical school, cancer, Julia's voice softened. Actually, she's why I decided to become a doctor. I wanted to help people like her. Ryan felt a connection forming. My parents died in an accident 5 years ago. That's when I stepped up to take care of Sophie. Julia's eyes met his, filled with understanding rather than pity. That explains a lot about you. What do you mean? The way you watch over her from a distance. The pride in your eyes when people congratulate her, Julia observed. You're protective, but you don't smother her. It's nice. The song ended, but neither moved away immediately. Would you like to get some air? Ryan suggested, suddenly feeling the need to continue their conversation away from the crowd. Julia nodded, and he led her toward the terrace overlooking the venue's gardens. The early summer evening was perfect, warm with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of blooming flowers. Sophie mentioned you live in the city, Julia said as they leaned against the stone balustrade. I do, downtown, close to my office, Ryan confirmed. What about you? Where will you live during your residency? I've got a tiny apartment near the hospital. All I could afford on a resident's salary, she chuckled. Ryan fought the automatic impulse to offer help. He sensed Julia wasn't the type to accept financial assistance, especially from someone she'd just met. The city's expensive, he acknowledged instead, but it has its charms. Like what? Julia challenged. From what Sophie tells me, you barely leave your office to experience any of those charms. Ryan laughed, surprising himself. She's not entirely wrong. I work too much. But when I do take time off, I enjoy the small Italian restaurant near my building. Their pasta is incredible, Marcello's. Julia guessed, her eyes lighting up. You know it, I love that place. Their carbonara is worth every overpriced penny. Ryan felt a strange excitement building. It's my favorite too. I've never seen you there. Well, it's been a student splurge until now. Maybe once I start earning actual doctor money, I can go more often, she explained. Maybe I could take you sometime, Ryan suggested before he could stop himself. Julia studied him for a moment, and Ryan feared he'd overstepped. But then she smiled, that same captivating smile he'd noticed across the party. I'd like that. The evening continued, and Ryan found himself more engaged than he'd been at any social event in years. They rejoined the party, and he watched as Julia effortlessly mingled with guests, her laughter carrying across the room. When she was pulled into conversations with Sophie's classmates, Ryan found himself missing her company immediately. Someone's smitten. Sophie appeared at his side, champagne in hand. I just met her, Ryan protested. And you haven't taken your eyes off her for more than 5 seconds, his sister countered. I've never seen you like this, Ryan sighed. She's different. That's what I've been telling you about Julia for months, but you never listen when I try to set you up with anyone. You never mentioned she was. Ryan struggled to find the right words. Gorgeous, brilliant, not impressed by your millions, Sophie supplied helpfully. All of the above, Ryan admitted. Sophie's expression softened. You deserve to be happy, Rye. Since Mom and Dad died, you've done nothing but work and take care of me. I'm graduated now. It's your turn. Before Ryan could respond, Julia approached them. Sorry to interrupt, she said, but I should be heading home. Early shift at the hospital tomorrow. Ryan felt a pang of disappointment. I'll walk you to your car. Sophie gave him an encouraging smile as he left with Julia. The parking lot was quiet compared to the lively party inside. I had a really nice time tonight, Julia said as they reached her modest sedan. So did I, Ryan replied honestly. Better than I expected. Because you met me or because the catering was good, she teased. Definitely the catering, Ryan joked back, then grew serious. I meant what I said earlier about Marcello's. Julia reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Put your number in, I'll text you when I have a night off. Ryan entered his contact information, trying to contain his excitement. He couldn't remember the last time he'd given his personal number to someone he'd just met. Thank you for the dance, Ryan Ford, Julia said, getting into her car. Thank you for the conversation, Julia Hayes, he replied. As he watched her drive away, Ryan had the distinct feeling that something significant had just happened. Something that might change everything. 3 days later, Ryan was reviewing plans for his newest development when his phone buzzed. Free tomorrow night. Carbonara calling. Julia, a smile spread across his face as he replied. Pick you up at 7, her response came quickly. It's a date. Ryan stared at those 3 words, feeling both exhilarated and terrified. A date. He hadn't been on a proper date in years. The following evening, Ryan found himself unusually nervous as he pulled up to Julia's apartment building. It was in a decent neighborhood, though certainly not luxurious. He deliberated over his appearance longer than he cared to admit, eventually settling on dark jeans and a crisp button-down shirt, formal enough to show respect, but casual enough not to scream millionaire businessman. Julia emerged from the building wearing a simple green dress that made her eyes shine. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, just as it had been at the party. You look beautiful, Ryan said as he opened the passenger door for her. You clean up nicely yourself, she replied with an appreciative glance. No $3,000 suit tonight? $2,500, he corrected automatically, then caught her teasing smile. And no, I left my corporate armor at home. The drive to Marcello's was filled with easy conversation. Ryan found himself sharing details about his latest project, an eco-friendly apartment complex designed to be both luxurious and accessible. That's impressive, Julia said. Most developers wouldn't sacrifice profit margins for sustainability. I believe we can have both, Ryan explained. It just takes more creative thinking and patience. At the restaurant, the owner greeted Ryan warmly. Mr. Ford, your usual table. Please, Antonio, Ryan nodded, noticing Julia's raised eyebrow. Once they were seated in a quiet corner booth, she leaned forward. Your usual table, just how often do you come here? Ryan looked slightly embarrassed. At least once a week. When you find something good, why change it? Is that your philosophy on everything? Julia asked, studying him. Not everything, Ryan replied thoughtfully, but I am cautious about change. In my business, unexpected variables can cost millions. And in your personal life, Julia pressed gently. Ryan considered his answer. I've been focused on work for so long, my personal life has been minimal. Julia's expression was understanding rather than judgmental. Sophie mentioned you practically raised her after your parents passed away. I tried, Ryan sighed. I was 27 when it happened. Already established in my career but not prepared to be anyone's guardian. Sophie was only 17. She needed stability. So you provided it at the expense of your own life. Ryan had never thought about it that way. It wasn't a sacrifice. She's my sister. Their conversation paused as Antonio brought them wine and took their orders carbonara for both, as planned. What about you? Ryan asked. All those years of medical school must have required sacrifices. Julia nodded. My social life definitely suffered. Dating a medical student isn't exactly fun all-night study sessions. Stress and perpetual exhaustion aren't appealing qualities. And now you're starting residency, which I hear is even worse, Ryan noted. Brutal hours, impossible demands, emotional exhaustion, Julia confirmed with a wry smile. I'm quite the catch. I think you are, Ryan said before he could stop himself. The honesty in his voice created a moment of charged silence between them. Julia looked surprised, then pleased. You're not so bad yourself, Mr. Ford, she replied softly. Their dinner arrived, momentarily shifting their focus to the delicious pasta before them. Ryan watched as Julia closed her eyes after the first bite, savoring the flavor. Worth every penny, she declared. They fell into comfortable conversation about their childhoods, discovering they'd grown up just 30 miles apart. Julia had been raised by a single mother who worked as a nurse, inspiring her daughter's interest in medicine. Ryan shared stories about his father teaching him the basics of construction and real estate valuation on weekends. He would bring home blueprints and spread them across our dining room table, Ryan recalled fondly. My mother would complain about pencil marks on the wood, but she always joined us, offering her opinions on designs. They sound wonderful, Julia said. Sophie speaks about them the same way. They were, Ryan agreed. Losing them, it changed everything. Julia reached across the table and placed her hand over his. The simple touch felt profound. You honored them by taking care of Sophie, she said. But now she's launched her own life. What about yours? The question lingered between them as they finished their meal. Walking back to his car, Ryan found himself taking Julia's hand naturally, as if they'd done this 100 times before. Would you like to walk for a bit? He suggested, noticing the pleasant evening. There's a nice path along the river a few blocks from here. Julia agreed, and they strolled toward the waterfront. The city lights reflected on the gentle waves, creating a romantic backdrop. I haven't done this in years, Ryan admitted as they walked, just wandering with no particular destination. That's sad, Julia said directly. Life can't all be boardrooms and blueprints. What about you? All hospital corridors and textbooks, Julia laughed. Touché, I guess we're both workaholics. They stopped at a bench overlooking the water. As they sat, Ryan found himself opening up about things he rarely discussed: his fears about the future, the pressure of running his company, the loneliness he sometimes felt despite his success. Julia listened attentively, then shared her own concerns about the demands of residency, her worries about making critical mistakes, her determination to honor her grandmother's memory by becoming the best doctor she could be. We're quite the pair, Ryan observed. Both driven, both a little broken. I prefer to think of us as works in progress, Julia corrected, her shoulder touching his as they sat close on the bench. Ryan turned to face her, struck again by how beautiful she was in the moonlight. Without overthinking, he leaned forward and kissed her gently. Julia responded immediately, her hand coming up to rest against his cheek. When they pulled apart, Ryan searched her eyes. I'm sorry if that was presumptuous. It wasn't, she assured him. I've been wondering what that would be like since the party. And, Ryan asked, suddenly uncertain. Julia smiled. Better than expected. You should definitely do it again. He obliged, the second kiss deeper and more confident than the first. When they finally returned to his car, Ryan felt lighter than he had in years. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a rhythm that worked around their demanding schedules. Julia's residency hours were unpredictable, but Ryan made himself available whenever she was free. something unprecedented for the usually rigid businessman. They shared late dinners when she finished hospital shifts, early breakfasts before he had to be at construction sites, and text conversations throughout their busy days. Ryan found himself thinking about Julia constantly, her determination, her compassion, her ability to make him laugh unexpectedly. For the first time in years, work wasn't his only focus. A month into their relationship, Ryan invited Julia to tour one of his nearly completed buildings, the eco-friendly complex he'd told her about on their first date. "This is incredible," Julia marveled as they walked through the spacious lobby with its living wall of plants and natural lighting. "It doesn't feel like a typical apartment building." "That was the goal," Ryan explained, pride evident in his voice. "We wanted to create spaces that felt like homes, not just housing units." They took the elevator to the rooftop garden, which offered panoramic views of the city skyline. Solar panels were strategically placed to power common areas, while planters were prepared for residents to grow their own vegetables and herbs. "You really thought of everything," Julia said, clearly impressed. "Not just me. I have an amazing team," Ryan admitted, "but this project is special. It's the first one where we prioritized sustainability without compromising luxury." "It shows," Julia replied, walking to the edge to take in the view. "Your parents would be proud of what you've built." Ryan stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Thank you for saying that. Sometimes I wonder if I'm on the right path." Julia leaned back against him. "What do you mean?" "I've been so focused on expanding the business, creating this legacy. Sometimes I forget why I started. My father believed in building homes that would bring people together, not just make money." "From what I can see, you're doing exactly that," Julia assured him. Ryan turned her in his arms. "You've helped me remember what matters. These past weeks with you, I've felt more like myself than I have in years." "Is that a good thing?" Julia asked with a small smile. "The best," Ryan replied before kissing her. As summer turned to fall, their relationship deepened. Ryan met Julia's mother during a weekend visit, charming the woman with his genuine interest in her nursing career and obvious affection for her daughter. Julia became a regular presence at his penthouse, her medical textbooks gradually claiming space on his minimalist shelves, her favorite tea appearing in his kitchen cabinets. Not everything was smooth sailing. Julia's grueling residency schedule caused inevitable strain. There were canceled dates, nights when she was too exhausted for anything beyond collapsing into bed, days when the emotional toll of losing patients left her withdrawn and quiet. Ryan learned to adapt, bringing dinner to her apartment when she couldn't go out, listening when she needed to talk through difficult cases, giving her space when she needed solitude. It was a new experience for the typically controlling businessman, relinquishing his need for perfect plans, and embracing the unpredictability of loving someone with such demanding work. 3 months into their relationship, Julia was scheduled for a rare weekend off. Ryan had planned a surprise getaway to a coastal town a few hours from the city, booking a charming bed and breakfast and making reservations at the best restaurant in the area. The night before they were set to leave, his phone rang. "Ryan," Julia's voice sounded strained, "I'm so sorry. There's been a major accident on the highway, multiple casualties coming in, all residents are being called in." Ryan felt disappointment wash over him but pushed it aside. "Don't apologize, it's your job. You had something planned, didn't you?" Julia asked perceptively. "Nothing that can't wait," Ryan assured her. "Go save lives, Dr. Hayes. I'll be here when you're done." The weekend passed with Ryan alone in his penthouse, catching up on work he'd planned to ignore. Julia texted when she could, brief messages about the intensity of the situation, her exhaustion, her gratitude for his understanding. By Sunday evening, the emergency had stabilized. Ryan was reviewing contracts when his doorman called to announce Julia was on her way up. He opened the door to find her looking completely depleted, dark circles under her eyes, still wearing scrubs under her coat. "I didn't know where else to go," she said, her voice breaking slightly. I couldn't face my empty apartment. Ryan pulled her into his arms. You're exactly where you should be. He led her to the bathroom, where he ran a hot bath with the lavender oil she kept at his place. While she soaked, he prepared a simple meal she could eat before inevitably crashing from exhaustion. As they sat together on his couch afterwards, Julia's head on his shoulder, she spoke quietly. I lost 2 patients yesterday, a father and his teenage son. The mother and daughter survived. Ryan held her closer. I'm so sorry. I keep thinking about that family. How their lives changed forever in an instant, Julia continued. It reminds me of what happened to you and Sophie. Ryan nodded, understanding the connection. It never stops hurting, but somehow life continues. Julia looked up at him, her eyes serious. It makes me realize how precious time is. How quickly everything can change. What are you saying? Ryan asked gently. I'm saying I love you, Julia stated simply. I wasn't planning to say it like this, exhausted and emotional, but it's true. I love you, Ryan Ford. Ryan felt his heart expand in his chest. I love you too, Julia. Have for weeks now. You didn't say anything, she marveled. I didn't want to rush you, he explained. Your life is complicated enough right now. Julia sat up straighter. My life is complicated, yes, but loving you is the simplest, most natural thing I've ever done. Ryan kissed her then, pouring all his feelings into the gesture. When they parted, he made a decision. Move in with me, he suggested. This place is closer to the hospital, you'd have a shorter commute, and we already spend most nights together anyway, Julia laughed. Very practical reasons. The practical reason is that I want to come home to you, Ryan clarified. Even if it's just to watch you sleep after a 30-hour shift, I want your books mixed with mine, your clothes in my closet, your voice in these rooms. Julia's eyes filled with tears. Are you sure? My schedule is chaos. I'm sure about you, Ryan stated firmly. The rest we'll figure out together. 2 weeks later, Julia officially moved in. The transition wasn't without challenges. Ryan's meticulously organized space was disrupted by Julia's more creative approach to homemaking, and her unpredictable hours sometimes clashed with his structured routine. But each adjustment brought them closer. Each compromise deepened their understanding of one another. 6 months into their relationship, Ryan took Julia to Sophie's apartment for dinner. His sister had secured a position at a prestigious research laboratory and was thriving in her career. I still can't believe you two are actually together, Sophie marveled as they enjoyed the meal she'd prepared. When I introduced you at my graduation, I never thought it would lead to this. That makes 2 of us, Julia laughed. Your brother looked so uncomfortable in that fancy suit, I thought he was counting the minutes until he could escape. I was, Ryan admitted, until I met you. Sophie pretended to gag. You guys are disgustingly cute, but seriously, I'm happy for you both. Later that night, as they walked through the park near their building, Ryan felt a sense of rightness that had eluded him for years. The woman beside him had transformed his life in ways he never anticipated when he reluctantly attended his sister's graduation party. What are you thinking about? Julia asked, noticing his contemplative expression. How lucky I am that Sophie dragged me over to meet you that night, Ryan replied honestly. Luck had nothing to do with it, Julia corrected. Your sister is clearly a genius who recognized we'd be perfect together. Ryan laughed. Don't tell her that. Her ego is big enough already. They stopped at a fountain illuminated by soft lights, reminiscent of the one where Ryan had first spotted Julia at the graduation party. I have something for you, Ryan said, reaching into his pocket. It's not what you think, so don't panic. Julia raised an eyebrow as he handed her a small box. Inside was a key, attached to a silver keychain engraved with the coordinates of the spot where they first danced together. This is to our new home, Ryan explained. If you want it. Julia looked confused. We already live together. Not in the penthouse, Ryan clarified. I bought one of the apartments in my sustainable building. The corner unit on the 15th floor with the expanded terrace garden. I thought we could design it together, make it truly ours. Julia's eyes widened. You bought an entire apartment without telling me. Ryan suddenly worried he'd overstepped. I can sell it if you hate the idea. I just thought. Julia cut him off with a kiss. I don't hate it. I'm just surprised. It's a big decision. I know, Ryan acknowledged. But ever since you came into my life, I've been rethinking everything: what I want, how I want to live, what truly matters. The penthouse was right for the workaholic millionaire I was, but it's not right for us. Julia studied the key in her palm. A fresh start, together, Ryan confirmed. And Julia, this is just the beginning. One day, when the timing is right for both of us, I'm going to ask you a much more important question, but for now, this feels like the perfect next step. Julia's smile was radiant as she closed her hand around the key. Yes. To this home and to whatever comes next. Ryan pulled her close, marveling at how completely his life had changed since that graduation party. He'd gone expecting to make a brief appearance to support his sister. Instead, he'd found the woman who would become his partner, his love, his future. As they walked home to their current home, with plans for their new one taking shape between them, Ryan felt profound gratitude for the unexpected twist of fate that had brought Julia Hayes into his life. The millionaire developer who once defined himself by his business success now understood that true wealth had nothing to do with his bank account and everything to do with the love they were building together.